My name is Sulley. I'm the co-founder of Woodbury House. The intention of Woodbury House, I got into the art industry by a complete chance. I'm not from an art background, and in many ways I believe it gives us a bit of an advantage over other people because we're not, let's say, set in an old traditional way. So we wanted to disrupt the art market by doing things slightly differently. The way we've evolved is we've now got a retail arm, so an online store. So typically or traditionally our business was like art dealer kind of model where we have blue chip art, we would trade between clients, and now we've got a retail division. So what separates us to, let's say, the typical traditional gallery setup is we are a private studio. And the reason why I feel that's quite important is we are appointment only, we have a bespoke service, and we don't have a very large team. And the reason why we focus on keeping the business quite lean is because we wanted to make sure that when we trade in the artwork for clients, the clients pay the very, very best prices, and therefore they have scope of making some very, very good returns, and they are getting really, really good deals. It's quite simple, but the meaning behind a lot of these shadow figures are quite scary. They're quite unusual, especially for the time he produced them back in the 70s and 80s. And back then there was a lot of crime, there was drugs, there was shootouts, there was gangs, and these represented some of the hectic surroundings that he was involved with. So Hambleton hasn't got the recognition maybe that his predecessors have got. I'm talking about Jean-Michel Basquiat and Keith Haring. The main reasons are, number one, he didn't die young. Sometimes the best career move an artist can make, which is quite sad, but it's a brutal truth, is when they pass away. So Hambleton survived up until he was approaching 70 years of age. He only died 3 years ago. In actual fact, October is the anniversary of his death. So that's number one. Number two, he didn't work with the art market. He was a bit of a rebel. In actual fact, many people did say he was fairly hard work to work with. And as we well know, being a great artist, a great singer, a great fashion designer, you need to have a great product, which he had, but you also need to work with the right people. And where he was a social recluse, there wasn't a lot of marketing of his works. It was only when Andy Van Morbida resurrected his career and put on 5 shows around the world with Giorgio Armani that sort of resurrected his artworks and more importantly put him back under the spotlight. They were quite spooky, they were quite eerie, they are quite unusual, but for me, I like them. I think I think it was quite brave to do it back then as well, because they used to scare a lot of people, and for me, they just represent history. If you buy a Richard Hambleton standing shadow figure or any of his work, you're buying a slice of history, and I think that's such an important thing. It resonates for me, street art, because I feel I have the personality that some of these street artists have. Like I said, I don't come from a traditional background as far as art's concerned. I never went to college, I never went to university. I got kind of pulled into the market by chance, and I've done things my way. And street artists are very, very much the same. I'm not saying they're all rebels, but they just do what they feel is right and not how the art market tells them to do something. Bearing in mind, they used to call street art graffiti, which basically means you're vandalising. But they pushed past that stereotype and they've turned it into public art now, which is known as street art. And to be honest, it's probably the strongest movement in art since pop art or even modern art, which Andy Warhol founded modern art, or was a pioneer of that movement, and Picasso was a pioneer of modern art. Hambleton has definitely influenced a lot of modern artists today. I mean, the one that stands out the most is Banksy. If you've ever watched the documentary, which won an award at the Tribeca Film Festival, called The Shadow Man, which is basically about Richard Hambleton's life and his history, it actually referenced in there that Banksy drew a lot of inspiration from Richard Hambleton. And there's a bit of banter almost, which is Banksy owes a small share of royalties to Hambleton for all the influence he gave him. So that's number one. But number two, where Hambleton was a bit of a rebel, I feel that has inspired a lot of fashion brands today. I mean, people like Supreme, which is a massive brand, I think worth over $1 billion now. They've done a collaboration with Hambleton before in the past. And also a company called Dark Circle Clothing, who also done a collaboration with the Richard Hambleton IP in 2016. So Hambleton's more than just street art. It goes into other sectors, other genres, and it also goes into different, demographics. And I think he's quite an inspirational guy from a blue chip art side of things, but as well as a creative one.
What do you believe is the relationship between the tangible city and the abstract creativity that resides in city life?
Say that question again.
What do you believe is the relationship between the tangible city and the abstract creativity that resides in city life?
It's a really good question. We all know that back then it was called graffiti, but most of these artists started to reframe what the media was calling it and started to call it public art. So they were using the streets of New York predominantly as canvases, and I think they added a lot of flair, added a lot of colour, added a lot of energy. And now this is recognised as a massive movement, and so much so that many artists today who are fetching big money in auctions, including the likes of Cause, Jeff Koons, Damien Hirst, Banksy, I feel that there are pockets and they draw influence from people like Richard Hambleton and other street artists. There are plenty of galleries, art organisations that have done phenomenal things for the Richard Hambleton market. There's companies in the UK have done some incredible stuff. There's companies also in America. But with the Nightlife show, we discovered these 22 works by chance. Now, bearing in mind there's 53 of them, but we've discovered 22. So what we're trying to do here is re-earth this narrative, our understanding from all the research and interviews that we've done. This was kind of the first series of works that he done when he transitioned from the streets of New York onto canvas, paper, or onto some kind of medium. And then they was all folded away into these boxes and they disappeared. So now what we're doing, we're on a mission to try and find the remaining standing shadow figures, the Nightlife works. For me, it's a bit like a family. If you've been out of touch with some of your family, this is like a mission now to rediscover some of your family members, and that's what we're trying to do here. I think our street art is here to stay for a very long time. Again, looking at music artists, singers, writers, fashion, gurus, they all draw a lot of influence from each other, but especially the art world. I mean, even some of the most influential rappers out there, they always reference people like Jean-Michel Basquiat, Keith Haring, the Andy Warhols, Richard Hambletons, etc. So it's definitely here to stay. Coronavirus, COVID, and also the looming pending recession is not a good thing. We also know that it's hurt, it's unfortunately killed a lot of people. However, there's always a silver lining to everything. People are losing money in stocks and shares, they're losing money in the banks, they're losing money in ISIS bonds and your typical areas. So now they're looking for elsewhere to preserve their money. And street art, or art in itself, over many years, history shows us that people like to stockpile their money into art because it's kind of a safe place because it's a tangible asset. So for me, it's done a lot of good for this market, and I feel that it's only going to grow stronger.
Thank you. Do you have any closing thoughts or anything?
Our company is making a transition from not just blue chip, but we're going into the retail side of things. So what that allows, let's say your younger demographic or people that are not quite ready to jump into a 25, 30, 40,000 pound original work from a street artist, you can now obtain a collectible item that could be anything from a skate deck to bed sheets to a coffee mug to a surfboard, anything of that kind of design, and they're really cool. They could go up in value in the future, but more importantly, they're going to be quite unique one-off pieces. And then when they're ready, when they want to make the transition from the collectible items to merchandise, then there's an opportunity with our bespoke service to design and to cultivate a strong investment portfolio.